Well, hello, everybody. My name is David. I'm an arm wrestler from Perth, Australia. And today I have the privilege and joy again to invite Ryan Bowen to have a chat about arm wrestling. How are you doing, Ryan?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having us on once again. I'm enjoying your content. Thanks for the invite.
Great. Yeah, I'm doing well. For everyone watching, this is going to be quite a different chat where we're going to talk about kind of the taboo subject, I think, in arm wrestling, and that's really money, profitability, and the business side of the sport. And I thought Ryan would be a perfect person to talk about because that's been his focus for years at this point. He's made it his career to both compete at the top level as an athlete, but also produce content. And now, even more than ever, actually put on events such as pay-per-views, that kind of thing. So thank you so much, Ryan, for taking the time to have this chat. First of all, I want to say congrats on getting the exemption to go and pull RVJ. I was very apprehensive as to whether you would get it, but it's awesome that you are. How are you feeling about that?
Oh man, it's all green lights. I'm happy that that business venture came through. And it was the reason the exemption was given was because of the validity of my business at the end of the day. I'm not sure that other people could get through, but because my sole income is arm wrestling, they granted it. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's been already, and we're still a ways out of the actual event, there's been a big build up, lots of back and forth, which has been awesome. And I think we'll touch on that a bit later when it comes to hyping up events and that kind of thing. But just to kick off the discussion, arm wrestling, I think, is in a kind of a unique position where it's kind of a baby sport in terms of popularity, production that's going on, but the interest in it from the casual observer is exploding. I know a lot of clubs have reported on their numbers that of arm wrestlers that are interested. The numbers in the club have skyrocketed in the last couple of years. And I think just the overall viewership of arm wrestling and the interest in arm wrestling content has shot right up. However, However, is there any money in the sport yet, or where is the money? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's an interesting discussion. I agree, because the season of the sport, or the sport has never really made it to a point where there was a substantial amount of money. I mean, there's been some pretty impressive moments in the sport from a marketing and production side of things. I mean, it was on the Wide World of Sports back in the day out of Petaluma. That was a weekly feature of arm wrestling, professional arm wrestling on the Wide World of Sports, which is a big deal. It's been in the blockbuster movies, obviously Over the Top 1987, but nothing really came of it after that. It's been on Eurosports, which is a pay television broadcast to millions of people, and yet still it was never able to achieve financial independence for itself or its athletes. And then it's evolved through different organizations like the PAL doing quite well, the WAL, UAL, having little moments where they put money into it, but again, not sustainable. And then now we're into the social media phase of it. And honestly, for athletes, I think the social media phase is the winner when it comes to money. Out of all of them, there's more people making more money now, I think, than ever before in arm wrestling. And the pay-per-view stuff is an evolution as well. Obviously, WAL kicked off that sort of theme. I don't know what their numbers were, but core sports numbers are good, like really good, and hence there's King of the Table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. And as you know, I did a pay-per-view for the first time, and we've got 2,071 signups on that one. So good revenue.
That's awesome.
Good, yeah. That was
What
it.
do you
That was
what do you think the biggest barrier to arm wrestling becoming a financially viable sport?
Well, the
Kind of
biggest barrier
for
in the
athletes and productions like promoters.
I think the biggest barrier has always been that people just aren't interested enough in arm wrestling. But with the explosion of the internet in the social media reach from different personalities, particularly Devin Larratt's led that charge. But Levon Sagnashvili's doing an amazing job, and more arm wrestlers are really reaching a critical number that is providing the sport with a way past the barrier that used to exist. And I think that we just suffered for numbers. No one wanted to watch a WAF World Championship. Too boring. But the personalities are coming through now with the social media side of things, and we're getting the numbers that we need to be able to have organizations put on pay-per-view events and say, actually, look, no, we can pay the athletes well, we can pay everyone involved well, we can have a professional camera and sound crew, and there can be a profit at the end of the day. So I think we're at a great time right now. And the thing is, I think the barriers that we're going to face in this season is production quality. Other people that are doing this going to impress those fans enough that they stick around. It's tricky. So we'll see.
Yeah. That's a interesting point that some of these productions, especially I think of the absolute peak of watchability and production level in my mind is WAL, or I should say was WAL, because they haven't put on an event in a long time. But the sheer amount of interest and casual, you can just whack it on the TV. And I think a lot of people who don't even know really about arm wrestling could watch it. And it's watching other events that you kind of realize how much they did. That adds a lot to the production. So in my mind, PAL, let's use that as an example, you said was boring. It's horrifically boring. It's so dull. It's hard to even watch the edits of the PAL where it's just the pulling. So it's that that I'm sure there's a certain level of language barrier. A lot of the athletes there are Eastern Europeans, and maybe they produce content via their own means that reach to that audience, and the Western audience is just, we don't really know. But still, the event itself is generally, in my opinion, extremely stale.
Well, I was at the 2019 Top 8 finals. I got to witness them firsthand, watch them. It was in the stadium, and I was so bored. I was so bored. It took so long. It wasn't a product that could be sold to the masses. No way. Not at all. Not even close. And I agree entirely with you on the WAL. They do a fantastic job, or they did a fantastic job. Again, I'm not privy to the accurate numbers, but I've heard numbers float around that it was like $250,000 per event, WAL.
Yeah.
In terms of cost to get that up, so that's a big deal to have all the athletes there. Like I got to compete in WAL 504. I must have seen at least 30 or 40 staff there, in terms of tech staff. The cameras, I remember talking to the camera crew there. The camera, just one camera itself, $120,000 camera. So they were using the top end of production. So it's no surprises that it did look the best there has been. But obviously that then comes with the challenge of profitability is very difficult, because you need a big audience, you need third-party sponsors, you need a lot more revenue. And I don't know whether the revenue was reaching a profit. I suspect it was all coming out of Steve Kaplan's back pocket, and he was footing the bill and hoping just to get it to profitability at some stage in the future. But I don't know how close they were.
It seems interesting in my mind that they've got so much expertise in production and putting on a show, yet the marketing and the hype, I think in my mind was kind of lacking. I started the sport just as kind of WAL was kind of wrapping up, just as COVID was hitting. So I didn't get a chance really to buy a pay-per-view. I know now if it came on, I'd be buying every single one. and I'd be watching every bit of content they put out. But it is kind of interesting that the marketing side, the hype side, what seemingly was a little neglected.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, is that really the responsibility of a promoter and an event to generate that? Or should that move more on the athlete side to sell their brand and say, look, I'm going to this event. I hate the guy I'm pulling. I'm going to kill him. Support me. Put out content, and people want to see that match.
Yeah, well, I know under the big organizations, they did take it on their own bat. I mean, they sent Devin Larratt out to pull with Shaq and put him on shows, morning shows and whatnot, and a few other ventures like that. They did try to build brand in that respect, but it was generic sort of brand. It wasn't deep and real sort of confrontations, as you said. And so I think that it's a fine line with the big organizations, because a lot of them, they try to sign athletes and they try to own that athlete's image. And a lot of athletes have a problem with that because they lose their ability to build their own story via their own means. And so there's hesitation sometimes from athletes to do that. And I understand as an athlete with a social media brand myself, I would be incredibly hesitant to sign my digital rights to an organization unless they were paying really big salary or something like that, way bigger than I could earn on my own ventures. I wouldn't be doing it. So I think the responsibility, the big organizations love the athletes that do it for them independently as well. Devin Larratt obviously had a huge following. I mean, I got a call to the WL, I believe, because I had a social media presence, and they could run off the back of that and know that I'd get a few more pay-per-views because I have a loud mouth in respect to building hype. So I think it's a give and take with the organizations, and athletes need to be really aware of that, because, like I said, you don't want to sign away your rights. And I've seen people do that. I've seen people sign contracts where in arm wrestling where they've forfeited any future earnings of a YouTube channel, any rights to social media deals, all of it. And I think, oh, there's no way. It's crazy. But for the athletes that don't care to build their own personal brand on a social media sense, I guess it's possible for them to be nonchalant about that and not really worry that they're giving away their digital branding rights. But it is fascinating with the big leagues. I saw the evolution coming towards individual social media brands before COVID hit. I remember I was due to face Brendan Lemon Mulvihill, and I wasn't contracted to the WAL, but they were offering me contracts. They were trying to get me to sign for a 3-year period, and I remember I fortunately didn't have to have the hard conversations with them because COVID ended up knocking over the events and everything anyway. And they said we'll put it on the back burner, but I was talking with Devin, I was talking with Michael, I was talking with all these other people that were getting offered the same thing, saying, what are you guys doing? What should we be doing here? Do we want to sign up? And at the end of the day, I'm kind of glad that the sport has evolved to where it is. I think that WAL could come back now, a big organization could come back now and offer those same athletes just season contracts as opposed to 3-5 year contracts. I think that will work better.
Should organizations incentivize athletes to generate hype, and if we're in the age of pay-per-views, to buy pay-per-view sales with their athlete's brand or name? Otherwise, what incentives do athletes have to promote the event outside of just showing up and competing well?
Well, there's a sliding scale, I think, in terms of who's scratching who's back. So for someone who has no social media presence, but they're a killer arm wrestler, an organization like the WAL is giving them all of the benefit of allowing them to compete. They're doing all the marketing. They're putting them in the spotlight, making them look pretty damn special, even though this athlete's not going to be really bringing anything in terms of marketing value. because they don't care for it. They don't have that presence. On the other end of the scale, you've got the Devon Larratts, who Devon Larratt is the king of pay-per-view in arm wrestling. More so than anyone, the world wants to see Devon pulled, regardless of who he's pulling. So Devon brings an organization. An organization needs Devon Larratt. So for someone in terms of that scale of value, I think there is a midpoint. Like I think I'm someone who sits at a midpoint in terms of, I think I bring them a decent audience, but they also give me a lot by putting me in the spotlight, where I wouldn't have otherwise had an opportunity to be in such a professional spotlight. So I think every athlete is different in respect to how they negotiate and where that value lies between a major organization and subsequently whether they should be contributing, whether they should be seen to be contributing, or whether the organization gets to have their rights to social media. Really depends on how much value that athlete is bringing in the first place. Is kind of where I see.
It seems to me, so I agree with all of that. That it makes sense to me. Is there an issue with a lot of arm wrestlers who are at the elite level that can compete at the top level, but they may not distinguish themselves as much as, say, Devon or Michael Todd, some of those ones that have a marketing presence but are still absolutely elite? Have they not recognized the value of just making it? I remember you talking about it, and there's two big examples, I think. Matt Mask, who just making video, put a camera up and just filmed, and he got 20,000 plus subscribers overnight. And John Brezink, who did the same thing, just started it and started talking to the camera, doing live streams, and people loved it, and it generated a lot of hype in and of itself. Athletes, most arm wrestlers just sleeping at the ball, not doing that?
I think I don't like it when I see athletes that are genuine elite in terms of the arm wrestling respect complaining about other not quite as good arm wrestlers getting the opportunities to be in the spotlight. It is a give and take relationship, and especially in the season we're in right now with COVID killing the ability for major events to have tournaments, we're only able to have spot super matches, and subsequently for profitability to be potentially achieved, we need athletes that are going to bring an audience. And so it doesn't matter that an athlete in Eastern Europe is a killer. If no one knows who he is, no one's buying that pay-per-view. He could be absolutely top ranked in the world. No, it means nothing. People would prefer to see people with storyline. Look at Uncle John. Uncle John has made a massive effort in the last few months to create storyline around his arm wrestling journey. He's done it tremendously well, and his matches are getting great viewership. And Uncle John's arm wrestling ability, I have no idea where it's at. I think it's low-level pro at best. I think that's where he's at. I don't think he's a mid-level pro or high-level pro. He's low-level pro. But look at the storyline he's doing, and he's doing a fantastic job as a result. And he'll keep on getting matches and gigs because of it. So for the athletes that are the genuine elites, they do need to realize that the environment that we're in and where the sport is at as its development, they really do need to take responsibility, either take responsibility for their own brand and just do it, or sit quiet and patient and wait for their organizations to come back.
Yeah. I think Engin Terzi's putting on maybe the greatest arm wrestling event of all time, with East vs West #2.
Yeah.
However, so I can't wait to see it. But in my mind, that's really just going to show how many dedicated arm wrestling fans there are out there willing to pay to see it. I just can't see a world where a casual fan wants to watch East vs West 2. I can't see it, but every arm wrestler can't wait.
Isn't it sad? Isn't it sad that like we've got the most phenomenal lineup of super matches ever assembled, really, like that many matches that are such high caliber. And yet I agree with you entirely that a casual fan's not raving about East vs West. They're not. It hasn't been marketed to them at all. And judging by East vs West production quality in the past, it's going to be fairly dull. I think it'll step up this time because Core Sports has got involved. So Core Sports is taking control of the pay-per-view side of it. I don't know if that means there's a Core Sports production crew there in Turkey. If there is, that will help. But that comes with a price tag that I don't know that Engen has that money. I know they've been trying to raise funds for it, but I still think it's a low budget event. So it's going to be arm wrestlers at the end of the day, which I can relate to so much. Arm wrestlers trying to set up cameras and mics and stuff. And that's, at the end of the day, it's when we're not experiencing that, we're fumbling our way through it as a sport, trying to get our best production foot forward. But it's difficult. Like you said, you and I were about to have this discussion tonight. I've gone and spent a few $1,000s in the last couple of weeks on equipment, and I couldn't get the damn camera feed to work. That happens on a live pay-per-view, you're in trouble. But it doesn't happen to a crew that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I have to say, because I work in photography and marketing and design, and to see some of the products that are put out about events is very very hard to look at sometimes.
Oh yeah. There's some posters that look like they've been made by a 14-year-old on Photoshop for the first time or something like that. But
having said that, I think AAF does an amazing job of their branding and their marketing. I think is awesome. So going on to pay-per-view. So I think I heard either you talking about it or someone talking about it in the lead up to perhaps the first King of the Table, that most of the sales for pay-per-view events happen at the very last minute. Like at the hype is built up and up and up and up. And then just as people are starting to see other people excited that have bought it, the FOMO kicks in and they're like, I've got to be there and watch it.
Yeah, that is 100%.
But at the moment, the only people doing that build that hype is either the caliber of the match is so high that people just are losing it, or the athletes are generating it. I think King of the Table is one of the first ones that I think of that has a pre-match conference and some interviews where the athletes get to go at it, and it was awesome. And it was almost like more entertaining. Like John and Devon's pre-match interview was probably more entertaining than their actual match in the end. So I thought that was awesome.
You're nailing it right there. And the reason why people buy pay-per-views, in my opinion, is not, I would say it's 95% story and 5% the match. People don't care for the match itself. Like, it's nice to have a war. Cool. A war is great. It's very entertaining for a pure arm wrestler to say, wow, look at all the technicalities of this pull. Fantastic. But more importantly is the fans' emotional reaction to, I told you so, my dude was going to win. Or hiding in shame because they got the bet wrong. That is more important. And you achieve that by having a good build-up, at least a couple of weeks of build-up of storyline about the athletes that are going to be facing, and preferably some back and forth between the athletes to give you that fuel. And like when Todd and Lachlan did their thing, if you look at that, the production value of that pay-per-view was atrocious, probably one of the worst in history of pay-per-views. And yet people watched it and were quite satisfied in the sense that at least they knew the conclusion to the story. And I had 100 signups to the pay-per-view about 5 days out. I had 200 signups probably 2 days out, 400 signups 1 day out, and 2,170 signups by ready go.
Damn. Yeah.
And all that came about during the last hour as well. It was the last hour. Uncle John and I were doing a pre-match show. We spoke for an hour about everything that was going to unfold. And all we did was talk about the story of what if Lachlan wins, what if Todd wins, what does it mean for this, that, all the different scenarios. And as we're doing that, I don't know if you were on that show or you saw that show, but the signups, you could see you were getting a little green, like it looked like a super chat comment every time a sign up. It was just constant. It was just ding, 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 ding. And it was like, oh my goodness, wow. 2,170 signed up. And 90% of that in the last hour. So absolutely, storyline is key. And it's really interesting. Like, I'm doing a pay-per-view event. I'm going to be making the attempt. I built this studio that I'm sitting in right now to up my production level and to invest in storyline. I'm so much so that I'm flying Jake Ward, for instance, up to Brisbane. Not because I like Jake Ward's in-match commentary. That's not the reason. Although it's entertaining, that's not the reason I'm doing it. I'm bringing him up for the pre-show because I want to, for 2 hours prior to that card, sit here next to Jake and just talk about the craziness of this match and see how many people get caught up in the, oh yeah, I want to see this. So I think that I identify that as a really critical point, and we'll get the athletes in as well. So we'll have them one at a time in that pre-match show because they're all here in Brisbane. So we'll be able to get little bits from them and just make it as much as we can about the fans and less about just the arm wrestling, more about the entire package that is sport. And you think about when you watch sport, if any other sport, if we just saw the Australian Open final and we had no context to anything about it, no one would care. No one would care at all. But people relate to their favorite guy and they like their story and they need to hear that story if you're going to get tickets sold.
Yeah, so I'm going to give, and we kind of touched on this last time we chatted about your unique qualities as an arm wrestler and athlete in your promotion ability. So we'll talk, I just want to talk briefly about RVJ and yourself. Now, I would say if your goal was Paul Lynn, boring lead up. Amazing match. Yeah.
Boring lead up. Probably a better match, probably a more balanced match, but
I also think Paul Lynn and RVJ, a lead up. Yeah. But again, mega match. So a fan of arm wrestling would love the match, but the people being drawn in by the storyline, almost nil. With you and RVJ, this is my impression, so you can dispute it or however you want.
Sure.
You were like, I want to compete against RVJ. He's extremely elite. He's one of the best in North America at his weight, maybe the best. That's my arm wrestling goal. I want to compete against him. As soon as you got to a certain level where you are arguably in the same sphere of ability, you started pushing for it a little bit more and a little bit of niggles. Now, RVJ seems the perfect guy to send a few of those his way because he will pick up on them and just the work is done. And you realized that. And you said, my job is so easy now. I will ride that. And I think that is you've made, if RVJ hadn't made no YouTube channel and never said anything about it, maybe you would have been a lot quieter and just you still push for the match. But RVJ's response to your little things you were sending out made everybody's job so much easier, built the hype naturally, and now I think it's evolved into some really some real sentiments, genuine feelings.
Well, you're spot on. You're entirely spot on with that. In every respect, I'd say you were correct then. And it has been for me as an arm wrestler. I got it. I felt like I got into the sphere of being worthy of a potential match, and I started playing my cards to see if I could get it. Rob bit back on a lot of those, got frustrated, got emotional, and I just kept on pushing buttons. And where it's at now, it definitely has evolved into genuine conflict. And not that you want to seek genuine conflict, but because it's evolved to genuine conflict, I think it's become the ultimate perfect scenario for this. I don't know. I've seen lots of people comment that they're more interested in this match than any other match they've seen or been anticipating because, and again, to quoting Uncle John, it's not about the match. It's this match could be, I could get crushed and it would still sell the tickets and people would still be happy. I could win and cause an upset and people would the same. Or it could be, it really does not matter how this match goes. There is going to be so many people that are going to be satisfied with just knowing the conclusion of this book. This book's been written for 2 years, and we're gonna know. We're gonna find out across the table. Like that's the only way this storyline can end is across the table. We arm wrestling with someone wins, someone loses, and the drama in between there will be real. And it is real. It's the easiest match I've ever had to promote in my life because it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
That conflict is real. I can feel his nervous tension. I can feel him battling his own mind as to whether he's just gonna. It's a double-edged sword. Me poking and prodding him, he could turn up like a Super Saiyan and just crush me, the best form he's ever been in, or he could mentally capitulate and it'd be too much for him, and the pressure gets to him. So I know I'm playing very much with fire in this respect, but man, it is in respect to pay-per-views, in respect to giving sports fans something to enjoy. I'm really happy with it for sure.
Yeah. And I think another point just to finish up is that after the match, whether you win or lose, or RVJ wins or loses, there's a lot to reflect on. When a match finishes, it's not just who's the better arm wrestler on the day. It's, Ryan said this and RVJ said that, and look what happened on the day. There's still something to talk about. With some matches, like you look at top 8, it's the driest conversation afterwards.
Yeah, you don't know what to talk about. You're just like,
his hand and wrist was too much. Yep. Okay, who's he gonna pull next?
If I win, people are gonna be saying, "Did you see the way Ryan bloody looked at Rob and smiled at him as he was when Rob couldn't pin him? And is Rob gonna quit the sport now, Ryan? Like, where is this? Is Rob gonna be able to handle this? Is Ryan gonna be an arrogant arsehole, or is he gonna be humble? Like, yeah, there's so much. And if it goes the other way, an equal, if not more, amount of.
I remember when Michael Todd put on his first live stream from Dubai after his loss first, Devon Larratt. Massive interest. Everyone wanted to get in and talk about it. That was partly because Devon had just such an amazing performance, but it was also the build-up, the storyline that had led up to that point that people wanted to know and to talk about it, which was really cool, which I think would happen. If you lose, everyone's going to look forward to RVJ's first video. That's going to be amazing.
I know that when I always do it whenever I go to a big event or a big match myself, after the adrenaline has come down a little bit, I usually go and find a quiet space outside of the venue and I go live. And they're always some of the most immensely successful live streams I've ever done. And I know, the one that happens in Dubai, I think I might get. I don't know. It'll be It'll be really interesting to see how many, because I think everyone who watches the match will tune in for both RVJs and my live, just for me to say, "Wow, how about that?" in whatever way it is. So,
I mean, I don't know whether you know it, and I don't mean any disrespect to the other pullers, which I think are Wagner, Bortolato, Hermes Gasparini, Sarah Backman, and Gabby Vasconcelos. I think are the other 2 matches on the card. Is that right?
True.
Currently, you're miles ahead. The RVJ Blue Bowen match is the headline match by a long way. It really hurts the production that Wagner and Hermes, they're Italian. They don't speak a huge amount of English as far as I'm aware. And I'm not even, to be honest, I have no interest really in seeing that. I'm not sure why they chose that match.
Because there's no storyline between them at all.
I think Hermes, like Jerry versus Hermes would have been.
Yeah, Jerry and Hermes has big storyline, straight up. Absolutely. And Hermes has done well for himself in the last 12 months for creating storyline revolving around him. His persistent calling out of Devon Larratt has been awesome. Even the way his run-ins with Matt Mask caused a lot of practice table world champ, all that sort of stuff. A lot of talk about Hermes. So I think Hermes has done really well, and he's got momentum in the internet space. But I agree, he's made, I'm not going to say it's an error, but he's not taking a step forward by pulling Wagner in respect to the storyline that the internet has for him. Everyone's just like, okay.
I mean, he could have called out a smaller puller, or definitely a North American, a level down, and then called for that match privately, and then complained about it publicly and said, I deserve so much higher, anything like that. And he's got a manager.
Yeah.
Surely they would have.
Yeah.
Give us who would be really good? Marcio, but maybe he's a little light. But I like Marcio versus Hermes would have been sweet.
Marcio versus Hermes, Todd Hutchins versus Hermes, Jerry versus Hermes. They're all matches that Hermes could win. And
complain, this guy's I'm way above this guy. I mean, he has to win then, but that I think would have created some interesting storylines. So I'm not quite sure who sets up these matches at King of the Table. And of course, Gabby and Sarah, arguably the absolute top female arm wrestlers. But again, outside of actual arm wrestlers and even arm wrestlers, maybe not care too much about that match. I'm not sure where the casual fan is.
One of the things that I've tried to do over the last 6 months is evolve in my ability to storytell on behalf of other athletes. I see it and I think, come on, give me some storyline, and I end up making up the story for them. I don't know. I try to look into forums, and I try to look into their actual situations, and I try to extract the storyline and then just mash it all together and put a video out there that gives the fans something to look at. And I hope people see that. I did that for the Arm Wars matches that went out. I did a whole series of videos on every match that came out, trying to build story. And I hope athletes see that and go, oh yeah, I should be doing that myself. I should be putting that out there. I think there's a lot of hesitation amongst athletes. I don't know whether they're embarrassed to do it because the sport's not big enough. But practice makes perfect, and it is like, it's something that I've become incredibly comfortable with doing for myself. I feel very natural on camera now, just in respect to projecting my ability and projecting what I think I can do. And people will call me delusional, and that's great in my opinion. I'm perfectly fine with people saying I'm delusional, because it's they're the people I get to either prove wrong, or they get to, after the match, say, look, I told you he was delusional. And it's just,
I think
look at Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is a great case study. Conor McGregor was the heaviest marketed guy out of all the UFC athletes. He marketed himself in a more extreme sense than anyone else, and that's why he became. And he ended up walking the path exactly that he said he would do. So that really gave him a lot of fans. But he had so many people telling him that he was a load of rubbish, and he would say, "No, trust me. In a year's time, I'm going to be the highest paid athlete in the UFC. You just wait and see." And I'm going to knock him out in the first round. He's going to do this and do that, and then I'm going to knock him out. And when he did that, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, weren't you a Conor McGregor fan? Like, I think we all were. When Conor first came to Rise, the reason we all loved him was because he was so talkative about what he was going to do.
And now seems the perfect time. If you think of the casual, not casual fan, I say that a lot, but basically an arm wrestler looking for someone to root for. Who out there can they go for? The heavyweights, there's a ton, but they're kind of top heavy, right? It's Devin, Michael Todd, Levan, I would say.
Yeah.
And they're head and shoulders, and they just happen to be also the absolute peak of arm wrestling. But you should filter down the weight classes, and just in general, I think, how many arm wrestlers can you root behind? Like, I think, like, a lot of arm wrestlers who actually arm wrestle, they look to athletes that are a similar weight and maybe a similar body structure. They actually, like, to be frank, I do care for kind of, I want to see who's the best in my weight class around the world, in North America, in my own country, Europe. And I care about those matches just as much as the super heavyweights. But how many athletes are there out there that are putting out content that I can get behind? There's so much room for athletes who have achieved a very high level to start putting out content and draw in those fans that care and do want to have someone to root for.
I agree. People like Justin Bishop has done a reasonably good job. I know that Justin, through leagues, has really established a strong brand image for who he is and what he represents, and he has a lot of fans as well. But again, someone like Justin could do so much more, even if he took it up. I know he's got a TikTok account, but his TikTok account is, for instance, not really arm wrestling; it's more political. But if his arm wrestling journey was more clear, he could establish so much more. But again, it comes back to money at the end of the day. Do the time and energy for athletes to do this? A lot of them have been hesitant in the past to see ROI. It's positive. That's changing now because we're seeing we're seeing a lot more make real money all of a sudden, and so people are starting to dabble, and it's ruffling the feathers of a lot of people. Seeing, like you said, we see elite athletes ruffled up by lesser athletes that have all of a sudden spotlight. So it's a fascinating point where we're at. I've always my overarching position in all of this is that I want to see thousands of athletes call it a career. I'd love thousands of athletes to be at that point.
This is why I wanted to speak with you, because I know that has been your stated goal for a long time. I think if I was in your position, I'd find it incredibly frustrating how little athletes are willing to seize upon the opportunity. I know it's tough putting yourself out there, and people may feel uncomfortable in front of a camera and not be able to offer anything worthwhile. But in my mind, it's just there's so much room at the moment. We're not in a competitive market of 1,500 athletes trying to compete for attention and fans.
Yes.
And
yeah,
absolutely. I just want to jump quickly back to pay-per-views and just kind of finish up some thoughts. Exclusivity with pay-per-views. How important is that? After there's a certain number of people that will never pay, no matter what the deal is. It could be 2 cents, and they wouldn't want to go through the hassle of paying for it. They will find another way of watching it. And there is a sliding scale of, it could be $100, and you'd have 2 people that would pay that much. There's a sliding scale. So let's just say you've got your price point. I think for your pay-per-view, I think it's $6 or $5.99. Is that right?
Yeah, $5.99 Australian. Yep.
Yeah. So $5.99. There's a level of people that will not pay for it. There's a level of people that are umming and ahhing for it. How much is that influenced by the fact that they cannot get that footage outside of your pay-per-view? If the event happens and there's immediately a video of the big match, how much does that affect your business, your profitability, or does it add to it? The fact that it could be deleted any second, there could be a copyright strike, and if it does get to the point where you start being able to shut down these streams, it actually it's more exciting, right? Because you feel like you're breaking more laws by having to search on all kinds of weird websites to find the footage, and it really promotes the event in the end because it creates.
I agree with you on all that sentiment. I am someone that I'm not going to ever fight hard personally to try to stop someone broadcasting it or reposting it or anything like that. I honestly can't keep up with it. I'm spinning enough plates as it is, just filming it and commentating it and being part of it, let alone not until I'm at the point where I've got a crew working for me will anything like that happen. I do agree. I think that it's a compliment in a lot of senses when people are reposting. I ultimately see it as value still. It's helping brand growth for the moment. I'm all right with people waiting for the random illegal screen share version of it. That's fine. If they do that, that's fine. Like, I'm not encouraging it, but look, I think there's enough percentage of people out there that are the fans that want to see it clear and crystal and real time and know that they're not going to have any risk of it dropping out halfway through from a strike being implemented and whatnot. So at the end of the day, I'm like you said, I'm happy. That's part of the story of the organic growth of the brand, and it is what it is. I'm not big on worrying about that at all.
I would say, going again, connecting back to what we're talking about, the more the match is just a pure arm wrestling test of who's the better arm wrestler on the day, the less appeal it has, because I will just watch the recap, the pins, because that's all I care about. I don't care about the production. PAL, I'm very happy to watch.
Yeah, you watch tomorrow.
Watch
next
5
week.
minutes later with no quality, just to see what happens in the round.
Yeah, absolutely. We're me and RVJ. You don't want to be the dude who says, "Oh, you didn't see Rob threw a punch at Ryan. You didn't see that? You missed it live. Oh my goodness, they almost freaking killed each other." Like that. You don't want to miss that.
The same with like Devin and John. The whole argument was about the setup. If you had a stream that cut out the 15 hours of the setting up, you'd feel ripped off, right? That's what you kind of want to see.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I like I like where pay-per-views are at. Like for me personally, within my brand and business, I have a very aggressive expansion in my mind that I think I can achieve. I'm really happy with where revenue is at after the Lachlan Todd one. That was not even planned originally for me. It was a last minute sort of pickup from Travis to do that. Went really well. The storyline was great. We got a good result. It put a big injection of cash into the business that I've been able to reinvest into more equipment and straight away put prize money on the table for a Brisbane-based event. Now, this next event's a real challenge because it's how many of those pay-per-view members can I retain? I think as we speak right now, I've got 930 people retained so far at $5.99. If I can keep that there all the way up to this next event, that's an outstanding result again for local Brisbane arm wrestlers competing. So hence, I feel like that's why I've gone so much all in on this one in the respect of making sure I don't need this one to be profitable. I'm happily spending all of that profit on equipment, on getting people like Jake Ward here, on trying to show the audience that, hey, look, we're making big steps forward here. Stick with us, and it's going to continue to make big steps. Because I can see in 3 months' time, I can see myself having at least one international superstar in this production against an Australian that's worthy. Whether it's Sam Burnett against Jeff Hale, or whether it's Jordan Davis against friggin' Justin Bishop, or Lachlan Adair against Krasimir Kostadinov, or something like that. I'll aim to have at least one of those matches. And then if I can, as soon as I can get the names and combine that with decent level production, which I think it's yet to be proven. I'm yet to actually pull it off, but I think I can pull off pretty impressive production now. I think that formula will allow for a good expansion. And my goal is in 6 months' time that I'm out of this room that I'm in right now. I mean, I'll keep this room for my purpose of creating content at home, but this won't be where the matches are had. I want to go and lease a commercial property and build in it a little cauldron like a WAL arena where we can actually sell tickets to fans here in Brisbane. They can come along and watch it real time. And yeah, we can hold matches, we can hold tournaments, and we bring out internationals and pay-per-view. The pay-per-view numbers that arm wrestling achieves, I am somewhat privy to core sports numbers. I don't know specifics, but I know the realm, and it's good. It's really, really good. It's impressively good to the point where
think people will start copying their model.
Oh, absolutely. There's a model there. Like you said, the what I'm going to be doing is somewhat of a king of the table um, style event. I mean, at the same time, it's my own event in terms of the way I commentate, the way I present, the way I tell story. I like the fact that I can control. I can be the main person responsible for building story. I can get the athletes to say, "Oi, I can crack the whip on them," but I know I can build story for them, even if they're useless at building story for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it has. If I could get to 1/4 of what core sports is achieving for numbers, then oh my goodness, the athletes are competing for big money. Big money.
There's one other guy, because for some reason, virtually every arm wrestler in the world has a job they are employed in, so they are involved in a business. You'd think they'd understand the concept of people putting on events need to make a profit for it to continue. It's not really that, it's not secret, it's not complex. Now, two people come to mind when they say, I will re-inject money back into the sport. Yourself and Gary Roberts. Now, Gary Roberts was before my time, and I massively appreciate the footage he puts out. But from what I understand, his main marketing thing was entirely to arm wrestlers, and it was entirely pay my bills, please. I'll give you the footage, and I'll go to these events, and I'll put on events. That's not a business. A business is I will have the product really appeal, that will drive the sales. Don't make it about yourself. You as a promoter should be promoting the event. I don't want to, you will have some people that will support Ryan Bowen and love what you're doing, but the idea is people will pay for something that they want to see, a product they want to consume, and you're running a business. Ryan Bowen's running a business. That's his goal. He can only put on events if they're profitable, and the more profitable they'll be, the more events they will be. So who is paying for this? Is it arm wrestlers, or is it fans of Ryan Bowen, or fans of arm wrestling who have never arm wrestled at all?
Well, it's interesting right now. I said that first pay-per-view event established a really healthy amount of revenue, and of the 2,070 people on there, I think I would guess. I mean, I didn't go through the names on there to see if I could recognize, but I would imagine that I would say I reckon my gut feels at least 90% of those people in that pay-per-view what I would classify as fans of the sport. I don't think they were
never arm wrestled.
I don't think they were arm wrestlers from the USA or in that. I mean, obviously the Australian arm wrestlers would have been in there, but again, I don't think any more than 10% of that was arm wrestlers. I think it was fans that were there, and so the fans of the sport are providing that revenue. I've always tried to be very aware of the fact that the business only grows through the support of the fans and the community. And I've always tried to keep my finger on the pulse for what it is that they want. And I try to evolve very quickly, and I try to give them what they want, the product that they're asking for. And it's this fumbling through that mindset and that gathering of data and gathering of and refinement of your product that you eventually get there. So that's why I'm really excited where I'm at right now, because the results we got with Lachlan and Todd were far greater than I anticipated. Far greater to have
with terrible production.
With awful production. That's why I'm so keen to do this next one and show people that it like the level of increase from that last one to this one will be just absurd. It'll be an absurd. The sound quality should be as good as you're hearing right now. Match sounds picked up. I've gone out and purchased like $500 worth of music. That is non-copyright music. That is still freaking awesome music that'll give atmosphere to the arena and lots of stuff. So I've got like an hour's worth of amazing music. We've got lights that will respond to music. I've got an area where I'm going to introduce the athletes in. We've got live commentary. It'll be Jake and myself. We've got a pre-match show that will go for at least 2 hours. Pre-match live show. We'll have a post-match show. The whole thing will be like, whoa, okay, that's a big step up. But the downside is the one thing this event doesn't have, my next one, is it doesn't have the marquee athlete. It doesn't have Todd Hutchins v. Lachlan there. So we'll see. I know I'm not expecting as many people in this one, but the one after this one, I suspect people might go, oh shit, wow, Ryan's production was freaking amazing. And for this third one, he's actually got an athlete involved that's really killer.
Yeah.
Like I'd love to have Matayo Rangi against Lachlan or something like that for the third one. I feel like that would bring a lot of interest for particularly
New Zealand get Ben
fans.
Carroll. Ooh, that'd be
100%. Ben Carroll needs to, and Ben will come once he sees there's money enough. He'll be go, oh well, hang on, how much you paid, Ryan? Like if I'm paying $5,000 to the winner or something like that, then Ben's probably gonna be interested.
Yeah. So just to quickly, I have thoughts about people that watch arm wrestling, and additional thoughts when I go on the arm wrestling forums or Facebook groups of supposed arm wrestling fans and arm wrestlers. It just seems to me that almost nobody knows anything about arm wrestling who are fans. Even arm wrestlers who have been arm wrestling for a while are clueless. Yeah. Now there's a level of, well, most arm wrestlers, like I haven't even been doing it for 2 years yet. So, and I think a lot of arm wrestlers are very young. There isn't a generation of Western arm wrestlers precedent, I don't think, quite yet. So there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions that either have never been on the table or are terrible arm wrestlers. Like there's no, how do you prove that you're a good arm wrestler? You know, a lot of people do gym lifts and show their forearms. There's absolutely zero indication as to their ability on the table and their ability to criticize elite athletes at their pulling. How good is that? Is that what arm wrestling forums will be for 30 years?
It does generate and fuel a lot of discussion because, like you said, you can't validate who has credibility in their opinion or not amongst fans. There are great fans, like I would say, like for instance, Pradeep Singh from Arm Wrestling News. He's a fan that evolved into a genuinely talented commentator. He's not an arm wrestler, and yet he actually does perceive and observe and subsequently predicts outcomes quite well. But then again, there are so many. I agree. I've seen so many comments from different people in that space where it's genuinely clueless, and because it's not, we're not in a sport where we're picking up a deadlift and we know that, oh yeah, okay, that person's got a 350 kilo deadlift. They know what they're doing. No, we don't know that. It's arm wrestling, and a lot of people think that The Rock would beat me in an arm wrestle very easily. A lot of the fans, I think, would still think The Rock would win. And so it takes I see it as it takes a good year, at least, of someone being involved as a fan to start to work out the lay of the land as to who's ranked where and why they're ranked where they're ranked, and what the difference between a practice pool is and a comp pool. And you see the full spectrum of I'll train with the Burnett brothers, for instance. And a lot of the fans that are going for RVJ are laughing, saying, look, Ryan's struggling with these 12-year-olds. And it's like they think I'm genuinely struggling with the Burnetts, and the Burnetts are killers, don't get me wrong, but they can't see the training value of not letting that person, or not taking everything away from that person, but allowing them to work and all that sort of stuff. So it's a big, long process. So ultimately, I do think that ecosystem of fans, I don't know.
Is that inherent for arm wrestling though? Because it's a weird sport where you don't see all the subtle movements that go on unless you're a really decent arm wrestler. I would say you don't know what's going on. It does look like a strength match, but really arm wrestlers know it's like, unless there's a strength gap that is significant, it is jiu-jitsu. It's black belt.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu. It's a martial art, and no random fan of jiu-jitsu is giving like technical advice, and it's not in other sports. So arm wrestling's kind of a weird mix of there's so much going on that it's really hard to tell. The strap setup is so important, yet dull to watch. Like there's nothing. WL just gets through it, and arm wrestlers are like, what are they doing? But the casual fan doesn't want to watch that. And we're not quite at the level of, like, say, AFL or football, where people just love their club. They've never played AFL. They've never played the sport before, but they love their team, and they hate the ref that calls against their team, and they hate the other team. There's all this kind of stuff going on. Whereas arm wrestling is kind of in that middle ground of being a really technical sport that looks really strength-based, and there is a certain definitely level of strength that cannot be really reflected in gym lifts and how big your bicep is. It's a weird sport. So I wonder how it's going to be navigated to market that.
It is one of a kind. I think it's a unique asset that we have, and it does create conversation in a way that no other sport does. And for athletes, I partly think that's something that the athletes, particularly in the social media space, have to come to terms with and just accept as well, that you do have to get used to people giving you all sorts of comments and directions and things that'll just make you think, what are they don't understand, they don't get it, and you've got to resist the temptation to try to explain it, because you'll never keep up with the internet and the demand for that. So but yeah, it is a really fascinating component of the sport. I think ultimately, as we have to leverage it when we're talking about pay-per-views and profitability and all that sort of stuff. We have to give the fans something to chew on. We have to give the fans something to argue about, and it's actually an easy sport to give them things to argue about, which is good. It's good for pay-per-views that they argue. That's good.
So just as a final wrap up, because it jumped into my head while I was having that little rant, a commentator, I think, is so important to generating, to communicating what's going on and to generate hype. I think Neil Pickup is 2 kilometers above absolutely everybody in doing that. He's elite. There's no one even close to him. However, you do need to have some kind of, I think Aussie arm wrestlers also extremely good at just being enthusiastic. He doesn't have to break down technicalities. He maybe he could, but I don't think he ever should. His focus is on generating hype and just being enthusiastic about the match. However, we have matches that, if you were commentating, I know you commentated Lachlan versus Todd Hutchins. Experienced arm wrestlers basically saw that first slip and knew it was over.
Yeah, knew it was over. Yeah.
Todd Hutchins' ability to just block all that pronation just so effortlessly, and we're just like, oh, what? But you have to, as a commentator, knowing you still have to.
You have to paint the picture of hope.
The rest of the match, see how it goes, which is a tricky thing as a promotion. There's going to be some instance where the match is over from you can see it in either the setup.
And I actually like that. I've spoken with Pradeep Singh about this recently. I've talked about pre-match shows and post-match shows and the type of commentator you want to have. And I think the mixture of commentators is a really important thing. Someone who is a storyteller is really important. Someone who is just calling exactly the technical nature of what's going on and makes that call of, it's over right now, trust me, it's over. That's a really good component to have in with the storyteller. Put them together and the storyteller can continue to say, but what if, and the other guy can say, nope, it's done. Trust me, it's done. So having that spectrum of style of commentator, I think, is a great asset to have for the sport, that we can complement each other. And like you said, Jake's a great example of, he's a hype man. He doesn't need to call it how it is. My own commentary, I try to storytell quite a bit at the same time as trying to be analytical for the match. when I'm solo doing it, I do enjoy breaking down technicalities, but I love storytelling so much. And I feel like I'm more a storyteller than I am than a matter of fact kind of guy. And then people like Pradeep Singh, he just says exactly what's happened and it's over and all that sort of stuff. So I think that I'm excited about pre and post match shows just for that fun fact of combining all that together.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's all I've got. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting. I think it was really interesting, and I hadn't really heard anybody else in arm wrestling talk about this stuff, so I really wanted to sit down and hear your thoughts on it. So thanks so much for that. Wish you all the best in the pay-per-view. Hoping it does really well, and if you haven't already signed up, please go ahead and sign up. I think I can't wait to see the matches. I really want to see you pull again. I wasn't that keen on you and Lachlan, but I hope you have a match for someone. I know you're focusing on RVJ, obviously, but there's a bunch of guys.
I am focusing on RVJ, but I actually, my most recent offer was to actually Ryan Scott for a chance for redemption. Because I know that he wasn't preparing for me, and it kind of was a very last minute thing. So it'd be great. I'd love to pull Ryan Scott again, where we both have a month at least to prepare for each other, and that would be great. I would love that. So I'm very keen on a match again with Ryan Scott at some point.
Yeah, I'd love that match, and I'd also love to see you versus Brett Coots, because I don't think I've ever seen.
Please write a letter to Brett Coots and say Ryan wants the match too. He does.
Absolutely.
I've offered that. I've asked for that every year, at least twice a year, and hasn't come. But anyway,
well, we look forward to it when it does happen. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it, and hope you have a good night.
Thanks, Ryan.